Well, howdy ho! It's time for more Helminth. So I've gotten like a couple of requests for Oberon, and I've looked around on the internet, on the interwebs, and noticed that like there's not a whole lot of like Oberon videos out, and like it's not a frame that people have explored much yet in the Helminth system. I find that a bit weird because Oberon is probably a pretty popular Warframe, right? He's one of the first sort of Warframes that you can conceivably sort of like just, you know, grind for as a new player, because you just fight Eximus units and eventually you're gonna get him. So I think a lot of people are playing Oberon, and they would like to see sort of like what you could do with him to tune up his kit. So it's a bit tricky with Oberon, because even though, like, he's not sort of S tier or anything, he does have a kit with abilities that kind of synergize pretty well with each other, and they all sort of do different sort of important things. So you gotta think for a bit to see, like, what you would replace and what you would replace it with. So, like, as it stands, like, he has his number 1, which actually is very good for single target damage, and it scales pretty much infinitely because it deals a percentage of the enemy's health. So it's like very good for dealing with bosses, stuff like that. You got his number 2, which is like the hallowed ground, which is a big staple for him, where it's just like enemies take radiation damage when they stand on it. They take rad proc, so they get confused and they, you know, hurt each other. You can stack them to stack the damage, like up to 4 of these things. And then you have his number 3, which is self-healing, and if you cast it while you're standing on the hallowed ground, you get like an armor buff, so it's very important for survivability. So like your number 2 and your number 3, they're pretty much irreplaceable, you need those. And then you have his number 4, which you use to slam enemies into the ground, and if you slam them into hallowed ground, you do a bit of armor stripping. And that's also sort of like kind of important. So I figured that the one ability that I can sort of replace if I want to sort of switch up what you use Oberon for would be his number 1 ability, the Smite. And normally what people use Oberon for mostly is Eidolons, because he does radiation damage. If you stand on the hallowed ground, you're immune to status effects. You can do some sort of armor stripping and stuff. It's pretty good for fighting Eidolons. Other than that, people don't use him all that much, unfortunately. So I figured, like, what can I do to sort of, like, just make him more viable for other late-game content? And, like, he's close. He's close to being able to do it already. He just needs, like, to be a little bit better at what he already does. And what he already does is he takes damage and he heals. So what I did was I gave him a bit more crowd control, actually, and a bit more sort of status effects we can do by replacing his number 1 with Gauss's Thermal Sunder. And we're going to talk a bit about this ability and how it works. When Gauss uses this ability, he can use it to strip armor. You cannot use that if you have it as a subsumed ability, so you just use it for heat effects and cold effects. I'm going to show you what this ability does, because it's kind of cool. So, as it works, if you click the button, you do a cold proc on enemies. Yeah, you got a cold proc, and it takes some cold damage. If you hold the ability, you will do a heat proc. Yeah, see? So if you do these in succession, first cold, then heat, you will push enemies away. Check it out. So you do cold and heat. That's a knockback. If you do them in the other order, first heat, then cold, pull them in. So it's actually sort of grouping and like just getting people pulled toward you, which is nice. And if you do the same thing twice, you're actually gonna get like if you do the freeze thing, you're gonna get like a freeze effect. So you do like freeze and freeze. Look at that, frozen solid, and that is for the entire duration of this ability. So it's like, haha. No, it wasn't. I lied to you people. But it's a freeze effect that lasts for a couple of seconds. So if you do first the heat, then the cold, then you give them a blast proc as you pull them in, and then you do the cold again and you freeze them. So you do like heat, cold, cold. So you give them 2 cold procs, 1 blast proc, and you freeze them solid for a couple of seconds, which is some nice crowd control. So that you got your heat and you got your cold. It's 2 status effects. Then you do it on the hallowed ground. That gives them radiation. That's a 3rd status effect. And then if you have like a melee weapon with a condition overload build, you got corrosive in this case, which I just built it. I'm still leveling up this weapon, so it's not even finished yet. So it's got a corrosive / puncture impact. That's some more status effects. Then you can switch it up with like a Kuva Nukor, and you can add like viral and magnetic stuff like that. So you can actually stack a whole lot of status effects with this, and you know, just the cold and the blast procs, you probably won't get them from other sources. So all of these combined, especially if you can squeeze in like a number 4 as well, for some armor reduction. So you do this, and then you slam them, and if you do it twice, you're gonna strip all of their armor, depending on like what your power strength is. That's usually how people build Oberon. That doesn't really work in Steel Path, because enemies have sort of like extra armor modifiers, so they have, I guess, more than 100% armor in Steel Path. They have like 150% or something. So you actually have to like do it a couple of times to strip all of the armor. And so you got your radiation, and you got your heat, we turn into blast, and then cold. And then when you start like swinging with like a condition overload build, you're actually going to be wiping out enemies pretty goddamn fast. And what's nice about this is that, like, just, you know, it's good crowd control. You freeze enemies in place, you put them on the radiation proc as well, so that, you know, they hurt their friends instead of hurting you. Now, the thing about Oberon is it's very energy intensive, all of his stuff. He doesn't have a whole lot of shields and stuff, but renewal, if you have good power strength, it gives you such a good heal that you are just healing faster than enemies can hurt you. Especially if you have stuff that I unfortunately don't have. There is an arcane, which is very important for Oberon. It's Arcane Guardian. If you have a max ranks Arcane Guardian, it's gonna like give you constantly like plus 900 armor, and that's gonna help you with your survivability a lot. I unfortunately don't have that. Like, I am not an Oberon main. You can see here, it's like, this is a 0 Forma Oberon build. And, you know, it's a weapon, a melee weapon I'm still leveling up, so I'm not even using, like, all the ability slots, all the mod slots in here. And I took this for a spin. Steel Path Survival, it does just fine. If you have, like, an actual build, you'd probably go pretty long with this. So how it works for his survivability with the renewal is you need to have this mod, Hunter Adrenaline, because you are taking damage constantly, and the damage is converted into energy, and that's your source of energy. That's where you get your energy from, and you have like a big energy pool with primed flow. That's how you do it, and that actually works pretty well. And what's nice about this build is, with the extra crowd control that you get from Thermal Sunder, you can sort of decide for yourself like how much enemy, or like how much damage you want to take in any given moment. If you feel like your energy is running low, then you just stop spamming Thermal Sunder for a while and let enemies shoot you. And then you get your energy back. And then when you have good energy pools, then you switch back to just doing crowd controlling stuff. So let's take this for a spin and like just show you what we're doing in practice. It's a combination of a bunch of different things I'm doing. Here we go. You want to cast your renewal while you are on hallowed ground. That's iron renewal. You get a bit extra armor for that, which is nice. And And then you just want to sort of like... You want to get your crowd control in. Want to pull the enemies. So you're not taking like hits from all of them at the same time. Want to squeeze in some of this. Strip some armor. Make sure that the hallowed ground is up. And as you can see, like when I take damage, this renewal is bringing my health back up pretty quickly. And, you know, if I feel like... If I feel like my energy reserves are getting a bit low, I'll actually sort of let enemies shoot me for a while. Because that's gonna regenerate my energy. And it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. Like, it takes some finesse. As you can see, I used one of my Phoenix renewals. It's an important part of this kit. It's actually very helpful for, like, endgame content. You have an augment for his renewal, which means that, like, if you have renewal up, you get, like, an extra free revive. Like, once every 90 seconds. Where it's just gonna deflect the fatal damage and you won't die. So it's kind of cool, just using a sort of condition overload melee build and juggling between crowd control, healing, and purposely taking damage so that you can like get your energy reserves back up. And like I said, I have not invested in this build at all. This is a 0 forma build. You can go way stronger than what I have right here. More power strength means that you get more armor stripping from your reckoning. That being said, there are certain breakpoints. It's nice to just have it like at 169 or something, because that means you can strip all the armor with just 2 casts. If you want to strip all the armor with 1 cast, you have to get up to like 334% power strength, which is like not feasible. You'd have to sacrifice a whole lot of other stuff for that. But I like to keep it a sort of like balanced with duration, efficiency, and range and whatnot, so that you can cast a lot of thermal sunders. Other than that, it's just you can probably go pretty far with this, and it's fun. It's fun. Possibly a version of this would be to keep the smite if you just like having smite as part of your kit, and replacing reckoning instead. Because sure, while being able to strip enemy armor is nice, it's also a very energy costly ability. And you have to sort of spam it a couple of times to drain all the armor. And if you have like a really good melee weapon that you can use for steel path and stuff, armor isn't that big of a problem anyway with your enemies. So it might be better to just focus on crowd controlling. But yeah, that's the build. That's the build. Thermal Sunder Oberon. It's nice. It's nice. It's a nice little build.